The movie starts with Terry Richmond, a former veteran, riding his bike along the road, listening to music. Suddenly, he's pulled over and hit by police officers. Officer Evan Marston and his partner, Officer Steve Lan, handcuff Terry, claiming they tried to stop him earlier, but he didn't comply. Terry explains that he didn't hear them because of his earphones, but the officers are not interested in his excuses. They begin questioning Terry, asking personal questions about his identity. Officer Evan searches Terry's backpack and discovers a package. He asks for Terry's permission to open it, but Terry refuses. The officers detain him and call in a K-9 unit to inspect the package. Evan informs Terry that the unit will take an hour to arrive, but since Terry is in a hurry, he eventually consents to the search. The officers find a large amount of cash in Terry's bag, immediately suspecting it to be drug money. Terry explains that the money isn't from drugs, it's his own, intended to post bail for his cousin at the courthouse. Officer Steve counts the money, around $30,000, and questions Terry about his cousin. Terry clarifies that $10,000 is for bail, while the rest is for buying a truck to haul boats. His cousin, Mike, was arrested for marijuana possession, though he wasn't selling it. Despite Terry's explanation, the officers decide to let him go but hold onto his money, suspecting it could be linked to illegal activity. Terry tries to justify that the money came from selling his car and an investment in a restaurant called Can Long Chinese. Officer Evan informs him that the money will be held for 30 days pending paperwork and warns Terry that if he doesn't comply, they could charge him with money laundering. Reluctantly, Terry agrees and is released. He continues his ride to the courthouse, where he meets a court clerk named Elliot. Terry explains his situation, saying the cops took his money, and asks Elliot to post his cousin's bail. However, Elliot refuses, pointing out that Terry has no funds. He also mentions that the jail is under renovation, and all prisoners are being transferred to state prison. Frustrated, Terry becomes angry, knowing his cousin is in trouble. Before leaving, Elliot introduces Terry to Summer McBride, another court clerk, who's studying to become a lawyer, hoping she can assist him. Terry and Summer go for a drink, where Summer explains that the local police department often uses dubious legal tactics to confiscate money from people. After people fail to reclaim their money legally, the cops keep it, claiming it's for department funds. Terry reveals that his cousin Mike helped catch some dangerous criminals by providing information. If Mike gets transferred to state prison, he might be targeted by other inmates. His transfer is scheduled for Thursday, so Summer advises Terry to get more cash quickly to post bail and save Mike. They part ways, and Terry calls Mr. Liu, the owner of the Chinese restaurant, and his business partner. He asks Liu for 10 grand, and Liu agrees to transfer the money within a few hours. That night, Terry tracks down the police station where the officers who detained him work, and the next day, he decides to visit them. He reports a robbery to Officer Jessica Sims, describing the robbers with details that match Officer Evan and Officer Steve. As Officer Steve walks in, he halts the report, accusing Terry of filing a false claim. The department's chief, Chief Sandy Byrne, intervenes. Chief Sandy defends his officers and orders Terry to leave, but Terry offers to let them keep his money if they return only the bail money. Greedy, Sandy agrees. Terry asks to see his cousin before the transfer, and Sandy tells him to come at 9 a.m. on Thursday. On Thursday, Terry arrives at the station, but the prisoner transport bus has already left. Sandy had intentionally moved up the schedule. Terry chases after the bus and tells his cousin to request protective custody when he arrives at the prison. Terry then seeks out Summer for help, and she meets him privately, revealing that she's uncovered incriminating information on the cops, and they can expose the whole scheme. She also shares that the courthouse judge is involved. As for Mike's bail, Terry needs to bring the money to Elliot as soon as possible. Terry confronts the police chief at the station, threatening him and demanding compliance. Officer Steve tries to intervene, and a struggle ensues. Terry manages to disarm both officers, taking them inside. He cuffs them using Officer Sims' handcuffs and takes her to the evidence room, where he finds a stash of weapons and money. He retrieves his cash, but only takes the 10 grand needed for Mike's bail, sticking to his original agreement, and leaves the rest behind. Terry empties Jessica's gun and tells her to pretend to cuff him and drive him away discreetly, so the armed officers outside don't shoot him. She complies, using Steve's car to drop Terry off at a safe location, then puts out a police alert for him. Terry rushes back to the courthouse and delivers the money to Elliot. Summer heads off to get the judge's signature on the bail. However, before the paperwork is completed, the police surround the courthouse and arrest Terry. They take him to the courthouse basement for a medical evaluation, where Officer Evan brings him to meet with Chief Sandy. The officers pick up Sandy and drive away. During the ride, Sandy admits he made a mistake getting involved with Terry after they dug into his background. They stop at a hospital, where Sandy returns the rest of Terry's money. He instructs Terry to stay quiet and pretend none of this ever happened, warning that they could send him to prison for 30 years for assaulting the officers. Sandy then reveals that Mike was attacked in the prison and is being flown to this hospital for treatment. Terry is furious and emotional, but he reluctantly accepts the deal. Sandy warns him never to return to the town, or they will eliminate him. Terry enters Mike's hospital room, but sadly, Mike doesn't survive. Heartbroken, Terry asks Summer for a ride and heads back to his hometown. On the way, a cop tails them, but Summer reveals it's her police contact a friend who's looking out for her. Summer tries to explain to Terry that cases like Mike's have happened before, and the corrupt police need to be exposed. However, Terry is too frustrated and dismisses her. Before parting ways, he gives Summer his number for emergencies and bids her farewell. Later that night, Summer wakes up to find someone has broken into her house and drugged her. She notices a police car magnet on her refrigerator and realizes the cops are behind it. Panicking, she calls Terry. He rushes to her house, breaks in, and finds her in the shower, alive but shaken. Summer reveals she's okay because the cops injected her with a drug she used to take in the past. She confesses that she once lost custody of her daughter due to her drug history and now worries that if tested tomorrow, she could lose her chance to reunite with her daughter forever. Terry reassures her and sends her back to her job. Surprisingly, the judge asks to meet with Summer and orders a drug test, confirming his connection with the corrupt cops. Terrified, Summer complies, submitting her urine sample, but breaks down, fearing the worst. Meanwhile, Terry encounters Officer Steve, who summons his partners to block the streets. Terry cooperates, but Steve shoots him for coming back to town. Injured, Terry fights back, tasing Steve and escaping into the fields. He abandons his truck, walks to the Chinese restaurant, and contacts Summer to bring burner phones. Summer arrives and finds Terry being patched up by Mr. Liu. Together, they devise a plan to gather evidence against the cops. They break into the judge's house and confront him about the corruption. The judge admits he's been working with Chief Sandy for years, funneling illegal money through manipulated court procedures. If defendants, like Terry, were systematically stripped of their money, which was then funneled into state and government funds. The key to exposing the operation lies in the dashcam footage of these unlawful searches stored in the courthouse catacombs. Terry and Summer break into the courthouse, but find the cops already there, setting the evidence room on fire. Summer manages to stop the fire and steal the memory cards, reigniting the flames to avoid suspicion. As Terry waits in the car, Summer goes to retrieve her urine sample, but gets caught by the officers. Terry watches as she's kidnapped and follows them to a remote location. After the cops leave, Terry confronts one remaining officer, crashing into his car and choking him before cuffing him for questioning. He uses the cops' radio to contact Sandy, who offers to trade Summer for the memory cards. Terry agrees to the trade, with the meeting set at Rebel Ridge at dawn. Sandy's men wait, but Terry doesn't show. Instead, Sandy receives a call from Terry, while Officer Evan locates what he believes to be Terry's vehicle. Terry informs Sandy there's no going back. Meanwhile, Evan discovers Terry wasn't in the car, it's Officer McGill, tied up and left by Terry. Terry, meanwhile, is already at the police station, tearing through the back wall of Sandy's department. Officer Jessica alerts the other cops, but Sandy, in his greed, rushes toward the money, unaware that Terry is arming himself from the station's armory. Terry shoots Sandy with beanbag rounds instead of live bullets. Jessica arrives, and Terry cooperates, realizing that Jessica is the friend Summer had mentioned. Trusting her, Terry hands over the memory cards, instructing her to release the footage. While confiscating Sandy's arsenal, Sandy's men show up outside. Terry gives Jessica a loaded gun to cover him and starts pouring gasoline on Sandy's pile of money. However, Jessica turns on Terry, insisting she doesn't want any violence and takes him outside. Officer Steve confronts Terry and crushes the memory cards underfoot, revealing that he knocked out Summer so they could kill Terry without leaving witnesses. Officer Evan, recognizing the wrongdoing, steps up to defend Terry. The situation escalates, with guns drawn on all sides, but Sandy shoots Evan in the leg and disarms him. Terry locks eyes with Jessica, who lowers her weapon, giving him the chance to make a run for it with Evan. They take cover behind a car, and Terry throws smoke grenades to disorient the officers. Evan instructs Terry to activate the car's dash cams, telling him the recordings will go live in 3 minutes. Terry takes down the cops one by one without killing them. He eventually confronts Steve, seeking revenge for the earlier shooting. After dealing with Steve, Terry enters his car, where Summer is unconscious, turning on the dash cams before driving towards Evan to rescue him. As they flee, Steve clings to the car, attempting to climb inside, but Summer pushes him off. On the road, Sandy and his men give chase, with Jessica joining in. In a surprising move, Jessica crashes into Sandy's car, allowing Terry to escape. Terry speeds to the hospital, where Summer and Evan are admitted to the emergency ward. Before leaving, Terry removes the camera storage drive from the car, keeping it as crucial evidence to expose Sandy and his corruption. The movie ends with Terry holding the drive, prepared to bring the truth to light.